it's faster than ever to like write new code, but it's also faster than ever to like introduce weird bugs and technical debt and so on. And so ensuring the quality of what's produced is a really important.
Hi there, and welcome to PodRocket, a web development podcast brought to you by LogRocket. My name is Paul, and joined with me today is Michael Shilman. He is the product lead over at Storybook, and we're going to talk about Storybook 9 and just component testing in general. In this episode, Michael and I go over the current state of Storybook, how it's used, and most importantly, where it's going. We're going to be talking about a general overview of how developers are testing today, and then, of course, ways to leverage these tools and concepts to start thinking about bringing your apps and general quality of what you're putting to the next level. So without further ado, here's our episode with Michael Shilman.
Hi there, and welcome to PodRocket. My name is Paul, and joining with me is Michael Shilman. We're excited to get into it, to have you join with us here, Michael. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Paul. This is really exciting.
So for anyone unfamiliar, like I said, we're going to go over what is the basics for folks who haven't used Storybook. So can you give us a quick rundown in a couple sentences about what it is and why somebody would want to use it?
Yeah, so Storybook is a kind of a workshop for building UI components in isolation. Typically, like in the old days when you would build out an app, you'd run your app and you'd be kind of like hacking around on stuff. And it'd be really hard to kind of isolate out particular states. Like, I want to go into the logged in state when my credit card has expired or so on. Like, this is all sorts of like funny corners of your app. And it's just really hard to get into that state. So Storybook allows you to kind of like break out all the UI states of your app and see them in one place. So it's kind of like a blueprint of your entire app if you build it out.
That's a really great rundown, because you're one of the first people when you say, what is Storybook? I mean, you're coming from Storybook, right? So you know the best, but people say, oh, Storybook component testing. Look at my components. But right now, off the bat, you're telling us it's a little bit more. This is about blueprinting user stories. Would that be a more apt?
Yeah, I mean, it's different things to different people. Some people see it as a
Okay.
design system tool, and so I'm building out my design system, and I want documentation for that design system. That's kind of where Storybook grew out from. But we find that like the best users of Storybook are actually building out complex UIs in Storybook, and the reason it's so powerful is because they can kind of get into the corners and see all those edge cases and make sure they continue to work. And that's where component testing comes in.
How did you guys grow from being what would traditionally be considered a documentation, a pokey proddy, look at my component sort of thing, into a blueprint testing suite to really put your application through the paces? What would that timeline look like for you guys?
I would say Storybook kind of started out as a development tool more than anything. It was about kind of getting in and just working on a particular state. And then we had a kind of an overwhelming demand for documentation, and so we sort of beefed up that side of things. And that coincided kind of with the rise of design systems. So we sort of rode that wave, I would say. And so becoming a documentation tool was never like the goal. It was just something that happened by virtue of like doing that job well, I guess. And we always had testing from the beginning, but while we were working on documentation, like it was a big job. We support React and Vue and Angular and Svelte and web components and React Native and on and on. Even the list used to be a lot longer. And so we kind of had our hands full with just documenting all that stuff. And then I guess we started getting into testing a few years ago. We had actually built a product on top of Storybook called Chromatic that does visual testing of your components. So when you make a change, it'll sort of spot the changes and highlight those to you, whether it's a intended or an unintended change. And so we knew that that like testing was like a really key feature, and we once we kind of like had done a decent first pass at documentation, we circled back to testing and started working on that again.
So is testing now part of the base Storybook product? It's a cohesive suite?
Yeah. So the main focus of Storybook 9, we've been working on testing now for a few years. I would say that Storybook 9 kind of came together really with the introduction of browser mode to Vitest. For those of you who are not familiar, Vitest is kind of like the successor to Jest. It's a Vite powered, super fast unit test and component test runner. And that's just an amazing tool. And so we had done some testing work in the past, but once we had like a really good solid test runner to build on, we partnered with them. And so you write your stories in Storybook, and then you can kind of seamlessly test them in Vitest. And you can do kind of functional tests. We call them interaction tests. Click on a button and make sure an event got called. We do accessibility tests to kind of make sure that your component is usable by all people of all different abilities. We do visual tests using Chromatic for this like snapshot testing. And so it's probably the most comprehensive component testing tool out there. And we kind of package it together in a really like streamlined, easy to use way.
If anybody out here has not used the web view on Vitest, do it. You already have it. It's in your runner. You can just boot that sucker up, and now you can look at things not in the terminal. It can be helpful if you just want to see things running through. But this is for Vitest. So you guys are integrating tightly with Vitest, and you're talking about like being able to poke and prod and click and run a particular component. This is the Storybook side, right? Just trying to draw
So
the clear line between them for listeners.
yeah, it's actually not a clear line. So
Okay.
you can write component tests in Vitest, and Vitest does that really well. They have something called browser mode now, where they're running in Playwright or WebDriver, or I can't remember the other options, but you can do component tests. They look like your kind of old school Jest component tests, where you have like render the thing to the DOM, expect this string to be in the DOM, those types of things. You can use Playwright locators and events in there as well if you choose. They have a really full-featured component testing tool, and Storybook also has component testing built on top of that. I would say the key distinction between Storybook and Vitest is that Storybook stories are a little bit more interactive. So if you have a component in a particular state, you have controls where you can tweak around and look at it in different states. Oh, I want to see what that label looks like when the text is really long, and I can just go in and type in it. And so you can play around with it, save the story as another test. Whereas Vitest is more of just a straight test runner. But it's an amazing test runner, and so they do a fantastic job. We really love it, and we work really closely with them, with the Vitest core team. I would say we're probably like the biggest client of Vitest browser mode, and Vitest browser mode. I don't know if it's stable now, but it was experimental for a while, and we were kind of like early adopters of that and giving them a lot of feedback. And Vladimir, who's the lead on the Vitest team, was like fixing bugs in real time, and so it was a pretty nice collaboration. And I would say that like it's a you know I would definitely recommend giving Vitest browser mode a try. Vitest also has a UI, as you mentioned. I would say the main difference again between Storybook's UI and Vitest UI is the interactivity of Storybook and the features of Storybook. Like we do a lot more than what Vitest does, but for running your tests and seeing what comes out, it's great. And yeah.
Does Vitest, does Storybook help scaffold that like boilerplate sort of situational test that you might want to throw in there that maybe you don't want to have to pull out of your back pocket each and every time? Talking about test coverage, things you might not think of traditionally when it comes to making a solid UI instead of components.
Yeah. So with Storybook, you can, like I mentioned, you can kind of like automatically scaffold a set of stories or a story for a particular component, and then you can like tweak around with it in the UI and hit save. It'll save another story, so you can like quickly build out your stories that way. We have an add-on for even like recording tests, as you've probably seen for like Playwright end-to-end testing. They have a recorder. We have a recorder too. It's uh, yeah, I would say that Vitest is a bit more of a manual process, and Storybook is a little bit more streamlined.
So when you folks are working on this whole testing arm of Storybook, plugging it into Playwright, plugging into these different surfaces, providing boilerplate that is enriched interactive. You guys are thinking a lot about not just how is a developer making a component going to want to test something, but what are they testing? What are they missing in their potential tests? What have you and the team noticed regarding, like people never test for this thing, and we think it's really important. People should be testing for it. Or there's a lot of failures in deployed components in this area, so we had our team lean heavier into this sort of view or window of information that can be relayed back to the users of Storybook. Yeah, kind of putting a
Yeah.
finger on trends and things you're noticing there in the development space.
Yeah, I would say it's still pretty early in terms of like we just launched a few weeks ago, so we're still kind of like drinking in feedback from folks. But I think one of the things that I was playing around a lot. We have this accessibility feature, and so historically we had an add-on that you could navigate to a story and sort of instantaneously see all the accessibility problems with the story. Now in Storybook 9, because it's integrated with Test Runner, you can do that across your entire storybook, hundreds of stories, thousands of stories, and a lot of like popular UIs or design systems specifically are built out in Storybook. And so I was looking at like GitHub Primer for their all their stories and looking at like their accessibility. And GitHub obviously is a huge site, heavily resourced. Like one of the things that was kind of interesting about GitHub was I was running the accessibility tests against GitHub Primer, and I was looking at the coverage of, because we also integrate test coverage in there. And so like what are they testing, what aren't they testing? Um, and it was surprisingly good coverage, like really really great library. But one of the things that popped out that wasn't covered was actually a whole bunch of accessibility specific code that wasn't covered, that they didn't have like states for. And so I think when you do like a traditional accessibility thing, you have an auditor, you have somebody coming in and looking at this thing, and obviously like at the end of the day you're building the stuff for people, so it's important in accessibility to have a person on the other side doing that. But they'll go in and they'll do an audit, which is like at a snapshot in time, and they'll maybe find out like this particular problem, and then you go in and write some code to fix that problem, but you may never have an automated test for that. And I think there's just like so many corners of the code, and software is complicated, it evolves so much. And so kind of having like a place where you can just record all that stuff and make sure that it continues to work as you go change stuff, or as your AI comes in and changes stuff on your behalf, is I think a big thing. So kind of like the combination of automated testing across all these different dimensions of your software, whether it's like how it looks or how it behaves or the accessibility side on different device sizes and different browsers. And, it's like a really ginormous space. And that's something that computers are really good at, cranking on. And hopefully, our goal with Storybook is to give a home for all of that stuff where it's easy to just like file it and forget it until something breaks.
How do you guys see Storybook and this console of this one place integrating with AI workflows, with MCP tools and stuff like that?
It's something that we're actively kind of working on right now. I think that like, one of the biggest questions about AI is like, as people compare like an agent to like a junior developer who's sort of getting smarter or whatever. But it's faster than ever to like write new code, but it's also faster than ever to like introduce weird bugs and technical debt and so on. And so ensuring the quality of what's produced is a really important problem in all this. And Storybook's like main job with testing is to like allow you to see all the states and allow you to like ensure that they keep working and so on. It is about quality. And so that's kind of where our angle on the whole thing, but we're still pretty early in the exploration. We see people from the community already doing this, recording videos about how they prompted their thing to generate a new page based on some example somewhere, and then it dumps the thing into Storybook, and they can play around with it in Storybook. I think we'll probably end up productizing some workflow of that nature.
Hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah, it feels like a really great opportunity to sort of like force human in the loop of like getting a window into clickable, testable, compartmentalized pieces of output produced by, be it somebody committing on your behalf, and you can go in, stop things, look at them, poke around.
Yeah, if you think about it like a traditional workflow where you're writing code and you're, commit after commit after commit, and maybe you're reviewing one or two PRs from your teammate or five PRs or whatever if you're like really active, and now it's like with agents, you're you're sort of like reviewing a PR every 15 minutes or whatever. And so making that stuff really visible and easy to consume, I think is a hard problem. I don't think Storybook solves that problem, but I think it can be a piece of the solution. And that's what we.
What do you think is holding back? The answer could be nothing, but what if present, is holding back the developer body on breaking the ceiling of like next generation good component design?
Oh, wow. That's a tough question.
Yeah, I figure you guys
Let's.
might have a finger on it though, if you're really looking at like good components and bad components in mass, you might have a interesting opinion on that for us.
Nah, I don't have a good answer for that. I need
Okay.
to kind of chew on that a little
Okay.
bit. I do think that a lot of patterns are sort of like, stabilizing. Like we have, the sort of. Well, I guess a lot of patterns are stabilizing and they're changing as well. Like React Server Components is an example of taking something that was like had stabilized in a pretty nice way and then just like flipping on its head. So yeah, I guess in our industry, nothing ever stays the same.
What's your take on like React Server Components and integrating that with Storybook, and representing them in the same, similar, not being represented light as you might find a traditional client side SPA component?
Yeah. So the swing back to the server has kind of like been a pretty big challenge for Storybook. Storybook was built in the age of SPA and is sort of like built really for client side components. We did release a version, like an experimental support for server components, React server components, rendering in the browser, exploiting kind of a loophole in React. And the benefit is that you can just use it seamlessly with the rest of your components and mock it out in the same way that you can in the rest of Storybook and so on. And the downside of that was that it was kind of low fidelity because underneath the hood, React Server Components works in a particular way where it's rendering the thing in a server environment and streaming JSON over the wire and rehydrating it and yada, yada, yada. It turns out you can do all of that stuff in the browser as well. And so we're working on a new version right now in collaboration with the React core team to basically run that stuff in the browser. And the benefit of running in the browser is it's sort of compatible with Storybook's architecture and Chromatic, this visual testing tool that we built on top of it, and so on. B, it's lightning fast. So you can run, a test suite of 1,000 tests in maybe 10 seconds or 20 seconds or whatever, right? If you did the same thing in an end-to-end test, it would be, you'd wait a few minutes for it. It would fail 30% of the time or 10% of the, I don't know. It would fail a good chunk of the time for just flake reasons. And so by keeping everything in the browser, you avoid a bunch of problems at the expense of some fidelity. But that's kind of like the whole name of the game with component testing is like white box testing running in the browser really fast, lots of control, and you probably still want some end-to-end tests as well to make sure that everything works together, but you're not going to write thousands of end-to-end tests in practice.
Right, and that's good to hear you guys are working on something coming up. Is there a ETA on that, or it's just stay posted?
We should have an experimental, like we have a bunch of users who are blocked right now because we exploited this loophole in React pre pre-React 19, and then they kind of closed the loophole and broke a bunch of stuff. So there's a bunch of people who are like, oh, I can either use old versions of React and Next and keep using my server components in Storybook, or I can drop Storybook and just move on. So we should have something for them probably in the next month or so. Just to get people unblocked. I think for a final solution, we're still kind of in the evaluation step, but yeah.
What are the most major frameworks that you guys are integrating with right now? Like you mentioned Next, and I know you really try to be as broad as possible here. Earlier
Yeah.
in our talk, Michael, you mentioned even like React Native. What's the
Yeah.
current gamut of the easy to reach fors right now? Everybody's always making stuff work if it's not officially
Yeah.
supported. So I'm more thinking like
Yeah.
officially supported by you guys. And is there something that's not here right now that is coming?
Yeah, so the main ones that we support, I would say really well. We've supported React really well from the beginning. People think of Storybook as a React first environment, and up until recently, I would say that's the case. Over the past couple years, we've really leveled up our Svelte support. One of the core maintainers in Storybook is really into Svelte and sort of took it on as a personal project to really level that up, and has worked really closely with the Svelte core team and Svelte community and so on. And so if you haven't used Storybook for Svelte for a while, or you tried it 4 years ago and were disappointed and used Svelte, like give it another try. So that's gotten really good. I would say that Vue and Angular support is kind of a mixed bag. We consider those to be core frameworks, but frankly, we can use some work there, and we're doing that. Um, React Native is an interesting one because React Native was one of the first frameworks that Storybook supported. It was like, oh, we support React and we can support React Native. It's easy, right? But actually, under the hood, React Native is completely different, and that is actually the most different framework. And so, in I think it was 2019, I removed React Native from our monorepo, and I expected React Native to die when I did that. It was our second most popular framework, and like obviously it's a great technology, but it was just like we can't do all this stuff. And then we got a guy from the community, Danny Williams, who came in and started to like maintain it. He was using it for work, and he kind of took it on as a personal project to try to revive it. And I was like, hoping that it would survive, but not expecting it to. And over the past few years, Danny and myself and Tom Coleman, another maintainer, and some other folks have like chipped in, but mostly Danny's driven it. And I would say React Native support is quite good now. It's quite compelling both on the device and on the web. We have an officially supported web version of that. So those are kind of the main ones. Web components, I would say, is kind of hit and miss. We got a lot of web components users because design systems web components are popular for design systems. You build the design system in web components, and then you add a React layer on top of it, or an Angular layer, especially in like big enterprises. And that's something I'd like to kind of invest in more. The most demand for Storybook right now, I think the single most upvoted issue in the repo is Astro support. There is somebody from the community who's built out an experimental Astro framework. We don't have it on our roadmap right now to kind of integrate that into the core yet. It looks like it's usable, but we're sort of aware of the demand, and obviously Astro is a really popular kind of hyped up tool. So if we can figure out a good way to support it without going crazy, we definitely will.
Is there something out there, Michael, that you're like, I mean, when you're in charge of the direction of a project, there's always things where you're just like, I know this is like would be like really cool, or I feel like we
Yeah.
should really be working on this, but the temperature, the community, and stakeholders of the group at hand just like don't warrant focus for that particular item. What are those items for you?
Astro by far. Astro by far. I think Astro is a really exciting piece of technology. I've used it myself. I like it. And I think the appetite is there, the demand is there, the use would be there. And it's just kind of like we sort of like, I wouldn't say we've frozen the surface area of Storybook, but like we're kind of at capacity in a lot of different ways. And so we got to this point of being at capacity by being really greedy about just trying to do everything. Oh, somebody comes by and wants to contribute Svelte, 5 years ago or whatever. And we're like, great, come on in, join the party. And we did that way too much. And so now we're sort of overflowing. But if we can figure out how to like hire a new person on, or maybe shave off some piece of Storybook, that's like one of the big things that we've done in the past few years is transitioned from Webpack to Vite. And so we still have a ton of users on Webpack. We have like big companies like Shopify has like a 10 million line Webpack config for their entire company or whatever. And so from a commercial standpoint, we'll continue to support Webpack for a while. But I would say that like at this point, Webpack does feel kind of like a legacy technology. So
Oh yeah.
sooner or later, we might be able to kind of cut that loose. I don't know. It's not in the cards right now, but there are certain things that if we decided that we're moving on, could free up a bunch of time for taking on more stuff.
What about community related items? Some people out there are always making their own little rogue front end CLIs, MCP integrations. What are you seeing out there that looks tasty?
Yeah, I think for Storybook,
Yeah,
it's a lot. I think Storybook has been it's been a really vibrant kind of area of add-ons. We had a big add-on ecosystem. I think it's an area that we kind of like could do better at, frankly. We spent at the beginning as we were growing Storybook, it was like oh, the more the merrier, and we just tried to be as like prolific and as kind of inclusive as we could with bringing folks in and supporting community members and so on. I think as the project got bigger and bigger and the maintenance burden got higher and higher, we became a lot more internally focused as a team, and just like we just got to get it working and keep it working and make it small and make it fast and figure out how to get off Webpack and get onto V and a list of like 10,000 similar things. And so the focus on the community kind of waned a little bit. As we sort of turn the corner in technical debt on Storybook, we're starting to bone up more on the community. The most exciting things that I've seen, I have seen MCP server in the works from a community member. There's this recorder for kind of interactions where you can go and click on stuff and even create assertions in the UI and so on. So you're basically like writing these interaction tests as you point and click.
that's cool.
Yeah. It's pretty neat, and it's incredibly well done. I think sometimes somebody builds the thing and it's like a toy demo and it sort of like looks neat, and then other people like go and take it and like run with it and just like knock it out of the park. And this test recorder is of the second variety. This guy Igor Luchenkov has gone
Yeah.
off and just like created a beast of a tool inside Storybook, which is pretty neat.
Well, since we're at our 30-minute mark, I'm gonna go into our quick round, Michael, which are kind of like targeted questions.
Yeah.
They're made so that you don't think much about them. It's kind of like an off the cuff sort of answer. All right, so the first one is,
I'm terrible at that, by the way.
well, no, you're gonna be good at this one because we literally
you need
the
Jeopardy song for me to like pressure the. Okay, sorry.
This one, well, we're literally just talking about this one. What is your favorite Storybook add-on, official or community made?
My favorite is the Docs add-on. It's kind of what made Storybook, got Storybook on the map really, and that was kind of my baby. And so even though we're not like, focused on that right now, it still has a special place in my heart.
The Docs add-on. All right, number one is the Docs add-on. Number two, this is a true or falser. You can write good tests without writing code. And this is a very nuanced question because we're in the AI vibe coding era. True or false? You can write good tests without having written written the code.
I would say I would say true, but probably with a big caveat on it to some degree. Like I think there's lots of different kinds of tests, but yeah, there's you can write any test that tests something real is a good test in my book. So and you can do that automatically for sure.
Hey, that's a good one. Anything that tests something real is a good test in my book. I'm
Mhm.
putting that in the back pocket. All right, number 3. One thing developers do wrong when testing components. I like this question because it kind of speaks back to like the trends, sort of like you're in the space. What are you seeing in the ways you're designing the product? Like, what's one thing developers are always testing for? You're just like, guys, like, what about this glaring thing?
Yeah, yeah. I would say the biggest one there is kind of testing the implementation. So there was this whole like generation of like a jest test that uses testing library or enzyme or whatever came. You render the component and you assert that this text is in the document and you assert that the thing has this particular class. And it's just like this kind of huge test that tries to test what's showing up on the screen. But in the end, it's just like a bunch of code to maintain. And I would say a visual test that just takes a picture of the thing and compares a snapshot does a lot more than what you could do in the test and does it with zero code. So there's another example of something that like you have to, I mean, I guess you have to write code for the story, but for the test, the visual test, people think about visual tests. And I think there's a misconception that it's all about like CSS and does it look right? But if you have visual tests running across an entire like code base, it actually surfaces like, oh, this rendering error or oh, this functional thing shows up as a visual change. And so, yeah, I would say that that kind of testing too much implementation in your test is a bad practice.
That's an amazing one. Thanks for that, Michael. Uh, Definitely a culprit over here with sometimes doing that. Does this class name have this
Um,
method? Like, come on. Yeah, of course it does. All right, last one. What's the most underrated feature in Storybook 9? And this could be a personal selection of yours, or it could just be like, I feel like the marketing team didn't push this one enough, or people aren't taking to it. Personal or non-personal, both good here
God, I mean,
for an
I,
underrated feature.
yeah, I mean, I'm a big part of the marketing team as a maintainer. You wear a lot of different hats, and so yeah, I would say something that we didn't actually talk about at all in the post in the Storybook 9 release post is Next support. I mentioned earlier we support Vue, and our Vue support has been kind of hit and miss for a long time now. And Nuxt is kind of like the meta framework for Vue, kind of like Next is to React. And we never supported Nuxt for a long time, and we wanted to. Like it's widely used and it's a great tool, but we just didn't have the bandwidth. Somebody from the community came in and built a Nuxt integration, and that's part of Storybook 9. I didn't include it in the post because it's I don't know like whether it was upgraded to 9 in time or so on, but like for me that's like always bringing more folks into the tool is exciting, and so I hope Next users come in and kick the tires.
Awesome. Well, thanks for helping us get through our 4 quick rounds right here. Well, so teeing up our conversation, Michael, if
Mm,
people want to get started with Storybook today and they've never used it, like random person, they have a Next.js app, they have a Svelte app, whatever it is, they say,
yep.
I want to get a handle on this. What's the first thing that they should do?
They can just go into their app, they can type npx create storybook at latest, or pnpx or yarn dlx or whatever their package manager is they use, and that'll come in and basically try to detect what kind of app you're running, figure out the right thing, and run you through an onboarding that gives you an introduction to Storybook. We have tutorials on our website. We have a big marketing site that explains all the bells and whistles and bits and bobs that Storybook does. But I think a lot of developers are impatient and they just want to kind of get in and kick the tires and see what it does. And I would say installing it in your app it's the kind of the quickest way to go from 0 to 60, and just make sure you've committed your changes before you run, as always.
Awesome. Just run the command and get up and going. That's a good answer. It's
Yeah.
easy for a lot of people to latch onto. Um, and then you mentioned the docs, of course. If people want to hear from you personally, Michael, do you broadcast anything out there? Do you blog out there? Or would you defer people to a more public channel?
For me personally, I mean, I
Yes.
don't I write a half of the Storybook blog posts. So if you go to the Storybook blog, that's a place where you can get updates from me.
Okay.
I'm on Blue Sky, Twitter, blah blah blah. But I would say most of the time I'm kind of in the code and not so much of a content creator, if you will.
Well, if you go to the blog, there you got Michael, because half of them are
Yeah,
from Michael. So if you want to hear more from Michael, go read the Storybook blog. There, we got two birds
yeah,
with one stone.
easy,
um,
easy.
well, Michael, thank you so much for your time. Excited to learn about Storybook 9, and I'm glad we got that next line thrown in there, because especially if it's not up on the website, people can know they can go check it out if you're coming from
Well,
that ecosystem.
secret feature for those in the
It's,
know.
it's a secret feature, right? Well, hopefully we'll have you again on soon in the near future to see how this major upgrade for Storybook 9 has been going and what's coming for Storybook 10.
Thank you so much, Paul. Really appreciate you having me, and thanks, folks, for listening.